We are live.
Okay. So, the conversations that we've been having with people in our office lately, people who've been coming in for their free consults, has really, made me understand the landscape better when it comes to functional medicine. And it made me go, okay, I'm starting to understand why so many people are thinking that functional medicine is a scam. And it also, I was driving in today and I was thinking about the fact that, like, how we came up with our model and why did we come up with the model that we have. And it comes from our own personal experiences, coming from, me with an autoimmune disease that's now been in remission for 10 years, you having a stroke and being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and both of us just not getting the support that we needed, and having to figure things out on our own and how difficult that is. And so we wanted to create a model that actually supported people. But what we're seeing from people that are coming into the office and telling us their experiences, they usually find us because it's like almost a last resort thing, right? They've tried everything else, and then they hear about us, and they're like, okay, I guess I'll give these guys a try. And when we hear what they're telling us, it's like these functional medicine practitioners,
Quote unquote.
quote, are not even doing the basics of functional medicine. It's like a complete scam what we're seeing here in our own town.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, how disenfranchising is it whenever, talking about like the conventional medical model? How disenfranchising is it whenever you're told that whatever that disease that you get diagnosed with, whatever that health ailment is, whether it's, obesity at minimum or at maximum, cancer or something like that, that you're not told that you have some control, if not all the control over that affliction that you have now. And like you said, it's such a frustrating thing that we're seeing this. Functional medicine's exploding since COVID. Functional medicine has exploded, and there's a lot of people jumping on the train of functional medicine because, and which I don't want to speak for everyone and say that everyone's in it with a very selfish heart, but there's a lot of people jumping into this because whenever someone's hurting, whenever someone is sick, whenever someone is having that inflammation, that irritation, that chronic degradation of their life and their lifestyle, you can charge them whatever they want or whatever you want. And it's good. They're going to pay it. They're hurting. They're in pain. If you're like, hey, I've got this answer for you, it's going to be amazing, 100% guaranteed. That's $10,000 for 3 months. And who's not going to jump on that? If someone had a magic pill, lightning in a bottle that you could just drink and take, it's worth 100,000, 200,000, $1 million to cure whatever that is. And there, it seems, not once again, not speaking about everybody in the world of functional medicine, but it seems like there's a lot of people that have gotten into this that are not the best of character, or they're just taking what they've learned in the conventional medical sense or from the schooling that they got, that it's about quantity, not quality. And that's another thing that happens is whenever you do functional medicine right, it's not the most profitable thing in the world. There's definitely much more profitable business models to go into. But whenever you're doing it right and you're treating people like the individuals that they deserve to be treated, you have to spend a lot of time and you have to put a lot of effort into these individuals. And that does hurt revenue. That hurts the bottom line because if you're seeing 40 clients a day, what is that, 7 minutes if you're working an 8-hour day per client? Like, good luck. You're not going to make change happen. You have to give them time. And it takes, 30 minutes, an hour, a couple hours to make these individuals understand the complications that are happening within their body. And this is something I know you wanted to talk about that we're seeing in the world of functional medicine. We've actually had some people recently come to us that have worked with multiple functional medicine practitioners, and they don't have testing.
Yeah. Yeah, bare minimum stuff like that. And you made a good point about, like, since COVID, we've seen this increase in functional medicine, and that's because people have woken up and realized the conventional medical system is not working for them, for the chronic side of things especially. And so they're looking for root cause solutions. And so because we got more people looking for those answers, now we have more practitioners who are trying to fill that space. And I do think there's a lot of practitioners who are being well-intentioned in that space, and they know a lot about how the body works and root causes and holistic healing and things like that. But they're taught a business model that is not benefiting their patients.
Right.
It's benefiting the bottom line.
Yes. And it's like coaching is a skill. It's a completely different, subset of data that you have to collect and learn from. And it is a skill that you have to develop. How do you talk to each different personality that comes in your door? How do you educate them and meet them where they're at and tell them this is going to be the path that you need to take based off of your lab work, based off your environment, off your lifestyle, and be able to meet everyone at the point that they're at and be able to communicate to them in a way that they understand. There's going to be some people that might have a medical background and you can talk, high level. And then there's other individuals that you have to meet them at the layman level. And either way, you have to have that skill to be able to talk to them. And it takes time and effort to be able to do that. So that's also a very valid point that you made there.
Well, and you got to get to the root cause of their motivations, the things that they're struggling with, the hurdles they're facing. You've got to come up with, plans with them that work for them and how they make what we're teaching them to do a lifestyle that fits their life. That's a lot of time, and a lot of time that most practitioners don't have if they're running like a traditional type business where they're expecting to see so many people within an hour. Like coaching takes longer than that. And so there is that part of it. But we're, like we said before, there was basic stuff that's not being done that we're seeing people come to us. And when we hear their issues and we're like, oh, and we're thinking in our heads, like every time we do a consult and people start talking about the symptoms they've been having and how it's developed over the years and everything, we get that full picture. And then I know you do too. It's like my brain is ping-ponging on all the different ways, maybe this sounds like it could be insulin. Oh, this could be a gut issue. This could be thyroid, blah, blah, blah. And then when you ask them like, okay, so did they test for any of this? No testing was done. So, okay, so what happened? Well, they gave me a bunch of supplements based off my symptoms and then told me to see them in 3 months.
Right.
And so, how is that any different than the conventional medical system? Except for they've swapped out the supplements for the medication. So supplements have less side effects. Okay, great. But if you're not addressing diet and lifestyle issues, if you're not addressing the root causes by actually doing some testing to discover those root causes, those supplements aren't going to help all that much.
Right. Well, how many times have you had a consult with someone and you've been asking them certain questions, and in your brain, based off the thousands that we've looked at, working with, hundreds of people, how many times has your brain told you that it's insulin resistance? And then you get the lab work back and it's not insulin resistance at all, even though all the symptoms lead to that from what we normally see, for the normal individual. But there's a lot of people that don't follow that pattern. And they will have, there'll be massive issues with their white blood cells. Maybe their gut is completely in disarray. They've got dysbiosis out the wazoo. Or they've got, Hashimoto's. They have an autoimmune condition that's happening here. And that's where the root cause is. But for all intents and purposes, for that consult, whenever you're having the conversation with them, my brain would have said, 95% chance this is insulin resistance. And turns out it's not at all.
Yeah.
But if without that testing, that specific testing going with each organ system, you miss so much of the picture. And even if, say that you hit the nail on the head, you hit it 100% correct, it is insulin resistance. And you only treat the insulin resistance. But then they also had a issue with their liver enzymes, their AST, their ALT, their ALK was off, alkaline phosphatase was off. And then their red blood cells, their nutrients, MCV, MCHC, say that those are off. Now, they're not absorbing much food. So you wouldn't have seen that. Yes, you're helping with the blood sugar dysregulation with the type 2 diabetic state, with the insulin resistance, yes. But you've missed the nutrient deficiencies, or you've missed the white blood cells, or you've missed the kidney dysfunction. There's so many things that you miss out on whenever you don't do the testing. And that's why we refuse to run without the testing, because it gives you so many answers. And no matter how good you are, no matter how many labs that you've looked at, there's always going to be people that don't fit that mold. And for those people, you do need to have that root cause. And then again, how can you say that you do root cause medicine if you don't see said root cause?
Yeah, and it's not just a benefit for us to be able to know how we can help them, but also for people to be able to see that data for themselves. That's a whole nother level of motivation right there, because they may be thinking, that they feel terrible, that they wish they could go back to what they were 10 years ago, all these things. But they also kind of in the back of their mind, they're like, maybe it's not so bad. And then they see it on paper and they're like, oh, no, this definitely needs to be addressed. So it's like a whole nother level of motivation. So practitioners who feel like they're not getting patients or clients, that, these people just don't want to do it, right? Draw some labs. That'll motivate people. And then you've got you've got a goal, you've got a marker to measure now. And that's something that, because we don't just do the labs once, we do it multiple times throughout the program to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. And so many times that second set of labs reveals more than the first.
Absolutely.
Because that first set of labs, we don't know what their life is like. We don't truly know what their diet looks like, what their stress really is, and how that's affecting them. And then we start working with them for, the first 3 months, we're working with them, we're controlling a lot of those variables. So on the second set of labs, if things are moving in the right direction, great. But if things aren't moving in the direction we thought, now we know what we need to do because we've accounted for all those other variables. There's no guessing. There's still, that first lab is very revealing, but it is kind of also guessing on some things, because we don't understand their diet and their lifestyle. And so we're doing what's right according to the labs, but sometimes that second lab is even more revealing. And so it's a marker for the client to be able to hold themselves accountable. It's a marker for the practitioner as well to be able to hold themselves accountable too, which is why so many times we're like, no, we don't do it this way because, we don't do this type of diet or we don't do this type of way because we have seen from the lab work that doesn't work. We've got proof, right? So it's a two-way street there.
Absolutely. It's frustrating whenever you have those individuals that they're doing exactly what you're saying, where, they're not pulling the labs, they're not looking at things, they're not understanding that. And, this is a weird concept, crazy concept here. Letting the person's body guide you to health as opposed to you having the ego or, the knowledge. Maybe you're not doing it with an ego, once again, not trying to put that blanket statement over everybody, but thinking that, you have all the answers. And that's what we believe is that the body will tell us which way to go. And the first set of labs, I always call them, it's muddy water. There's a lot of things going on. And this is something we recently talked about, is the vast majority of Americans are actually underfed. They've gotten a lot of food in their body, but it's food that is not nutrient dense whatsoever. It's lacking a lot. So then there's a lot of cravings. There's a lot of, especially, sugar highs and lows, the peaks and the valleys, very poor sugar control, glucose control within the body, causing a lot of cravings between your leptin and your ghrelin, your hunger and satiety hormone. You're not getting the right signals. And with these individuals, normally the second set of labs, once they've eaten a lot and they've actually started to nourish the body, there's so many things that look significantly better. But then like the insulin resistance or like the insulin marker will rise on the second set of labs because they're finally eating. So had they been eating the same amount of food whenever they first started, their insulin would have been significantly higher. So for years, they're looking like they're not a diabetic or they're not a pre-diabetic because they're actually fasting their way away from it. But the insulin resistance is still there. Those cells are still suffering because they're not getting the nutrients they need. They can't make the ATP, they can't make the ADP, they can't give the currency to the cell for the cell to work because they're just not giving the nutrients there, but it's artificially pulling down that blood glucose marker so that A1C holds around maybe 5.5, 5.6. It hasn't busted into the 5.7 range to get diagnosed as a pre-diabetic. But then that second set of labs, it jumps up a little bit, not by much, but it'll go from maybe 4.9 to 5.5 on their fasting insulin. Of course, with our range, we believe that insulin, anything above 5, is it treading in the waters of insulin resistance. Like you are heading that direction, if not completely in insulin resistance. And the whole conversation around, well, if it's pre-diabetes and diabetes or just insulin resistance before the A1C starts to rise, it's all diabetes. It is all completely diabetes. It's all doing the same thing. It's just how many cells are insulin resistant is all that shows whenever you're type 2 diabetic. But the muddy water, once again, they're eating more and their blood glucose markers start to rise just a little bit. And so that second set of labs shows us more of a reflection of what the first set of labs should have looked like, because now we're accounting for, like you said, accounting for all the variables, and we have modulated the lifestyle, the diet, the stress, the sleep, in order to make sure that the person's body is healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this whole first part of the conversation on the testing, I mean, the first basic principle of functional medicine is test, don't guess. And so if they're not testing, that is your first red flag that this may not be a true functional medicine practitioner, or they're not doing their due diligence when it comes to that. And their testing should be more than just the basics. It should be more than what you get at your conventional doctor's office, and they should be using what's called optimal or functional ranges, not the conventional ranges that compare you to sick people, which is the number one reason why so many times you go to your doctor because you feel like crap and your blood work, it comes back normal. Exactly. So that's the most frustrating thing that we hear from people who have been seeing, they've been hopping from one functional medicine practitioner to another until they find us. And then the second thing is the, zero support. Here's some supplements, which are usually really expensive. Here's a bunch of expensive supplements. And then see you in 3 months. Or
Right.
maybe
Here's some
even
paperwork. Follow the paperwork.
follow the paperwork, and even those may have some like bare minimum guidelines. I know someone personally who she was, a friend of the family. And so she knew about us. She decided to go to a practitioner that was in her area and ended up spending a lot of money and had to discover on her own that if she cut out certain things from her diet, she felt better. They never told her. They never talked to her about the diet. I looked at her labs and they did the very bare minimum on the labs, pretty much the same labs that you would get from your conventional doctor, and sent her home with a bunch of supplements. And that was it. And she had to figure it out on her own, do her own research, and then started, that's not helpful. This is the thing. The internet is a great space. You can find out so much. The information is out there. So how are you benefiting someone by doing that? It's just, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that it is. And, that's another piece of education for the individual. It's not just you as the practitioner, you as the coach, or you as the individual that's going over the labs, for you to know the information to then bestow upon them the protocol. It's also on you to educate them to their lab work. Let them know what their lab work looks like, what each line is saying. This is what your glucose markers are saying, including, once again, conventionally, you're not going to get your insulin ran. If you've got a doctor that's running insulin, not glucose or your A1C, but actually the hormone insulin, you've got a good doctor. But if, as far as, now I've tried to lose my train of thought here, but with the, that's right, educating people to their lab work and telling them, with their glucose markers, what does this mean? What are the correlating factors that cause this to do the thing that it's doing, which for the vast majority of Americans, it's going to be going high on their glucose, high insulin resistance. Kidney markers, same thing. Are the kidney markers high? Are they low? What's the creatinine looking like? What's the EGFR? What does that mean? Where does this come from? Is it dehydration, or are we looking at some sort of renal disease? Same thing as your liver. If the markers are high, low in that range, your LDH, if it's low or if it's high, what does that mean? Same thing with the white blood cells, because every white blood cell tells a story. Your neutrophils, bacterial infections. Your lymphocytes, viral infections. Monocytes, I always call them like the either the minions from Despicable Me or the Oompa Loompas from Willy Wonka, depending on where you are in your generational gap there. They're there to help out with everything for the most part. Eosinophils, they can be there for parasites. Normally that's the low end. And then on the other end, allergens. And a lot of times the allergens, it's not dander and ragweed. It's something that you're ingesting, that you're exposed to every single day, that's driving those high. There's a few other factors that are in there, but educating people to their lab work is a massive part of them owning their own health.
Yeah.
If you tell them what's happening with each specific area and each specific organ, then they understand why they're doing what they're doing, as opposed to saying, we're going to jump into X protocol and we're going to get this sort of outcome and it's going to be great. But if you tell them specifically, this is helping out with this, this, and that, they're going to be more on board, and they're going to want to be more involved in their lab work, understanding their lab work. And if they have questions, they can always go back and look at the notes that they took, or they can always talk to the practitioner, as long as the practitioner, the coach, whoever it is open to that. If they have allotted time, almost like how a college professor gives, office time. If you've got a question about the lecture, you get to go into the office and talk to the professor. Same thing with a good functional medicine practitioner. They're going to have office time for you, or they've got it designed in there like what we've done, where, for our entire program, the most we go without seeing you is 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We are going to see you once every 2 weeks, and giving you as much support as humanly possible that's within reason for a business structure. And so once again, does that hurt bottom line? Yes. But if you're doing this because you have the conviction of actually getting people to healing their own bodies and owning their own health, you're going to make it work one way or another.
Well, and that's the other problem, is the time issue. So I think most practitioners have been taught from some schooling, maybe their background or whatever, that the best business model is, hey, time is money, and it is. So we need to fit as many people as we can in as little time as possible, and that's going to maximize obviously your business and your bottom line, and that's 100% true. But if you're here to make a difference in people's health, what good are you actually doing? And for us, like, the reason why we have the model the way we have it is because we were both left with no help. We had to figure it out on our own. It was really hard. And then when we did figure it out on our own, we were, I felt a lot of anger because I was asking for help and I wasn't getting it. And so that's why, these changes that you have to make to get to and address these root causes are not easy, especially in our modern society and environment. They're not easy. You're going to be going counter against traditional modern society. Everything we do here, the way we live our lives, is not conducive to health. And so to have a coach who's going to meet with you and help you through each stage of that, and you're traveling this weekend, you're going to this area, cool, let's find you some places that we know you can get some good food, let's plan this out. They don't allow this food, that food in that venue, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Like, teaching them how to plan ahead and stay on track no matter what life is throwing at you.
Right.
So,
yeah, if you can make it second nature, then maintaining health is easy. Like, I would make the argument for both of us that we have a very easy time with our health. Now, granted, are there complications? Are there wrenches? Plenty of wrenches that are thrown into the system, that happen. And, a lot of times it's wrapped around, sleep or stress or, the beauty of owning a business, constantly stressed about something. But for the most part, as far as like the diet and the lifestyle goes, it's second nature for us. We don't have to think about this in the least. We just do.
Yeah.
And it's a very simple lifestyle as far as that goes. But whenever you take someone that is running on the, standard American diet, the SAD diet, and you change everything that they're eating that they've been told is healthy that may not actually be healthy because it's got canola oil or it's got vegetable oil or it's got a high carb count, or it's, a copious amount of grains, with all the issues that can come from that, especially if you have GI issues. And that's what we're seeing with the younger generation. It's quite the shock. Mm-hmm. And if you're not there to support them and you ask them to do something very hard and very difficult in the beginning, once again, it gets easier as you do it over time.
Yeah.
But if you ask somebody to do something very hard and you're turning their life upside down and you're not there for them, once again, I don't believe that's functional medicine. And what do you think they're going to do if that happens? They're going to fall off the wagon. They may do it for a couple of weeks, but then whenever push comes to shove, without any support and any guidance or help, they're going to revert exactly back to what they were doing. Yeah. They're going to go back to their original lifestyle because there's no support. There's no help on the back end from the, once again, quote unquote, professionals that should be helping them out and making the time for them, once again, based on their convictions of who they are and why they're doing what they're doing. And like you were talking about with our stories, if anyone has listened to us for any amount of time, our stories. They've heard our stories, plenty of times. But, essentially, like what Erica was alluding to, she had her autoimmune condition as a kid, 17 years old. And I, at 27 years old, had a stroke and got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And at the very beginning of our journey in health, we both asked the same question, which it's funny because, this is two different states. We have...
Did not know each other at all.
Yeah, didn't know each other. But we both asked the same question. Okay, cool. I'm going to own that.
Yes.
And as the owner of that, what can I do? And we were both told essentially, very fluffy, but in a very fluffy manner, nothing. There's, buckle up. This is going to be a tough life. Your joints, in your case, with the Still's disease, you're going to have degraded joints over time. Essentially it's rheumatoid arthritis, but, pretty much everything gets it. And then for me, I'm going to live 10 to 15 years less than the rest of the population. There's nothing I can do about it. I have no power here. And that's so disenfranchising.
Yeah, it is. And that's always been our goal, is to give people their health back. So that's why we spend so much time with people, because if you're not going through the education, if you're not getting to the roots behind their motivation, their why, and helping them through every single hurdle, that they may face, we do a 9-month program. 9 months, we're gonna hit holidays, we're gonna hit vacations, we're gonna hit hard times that can just happen from life and that sort of thing. And the goal is that you end up understanding your body better than you ever have before, so that when inflammation creeps back in, because it will, because it's life, you understand the message that your body is actually sending you, and you can address it yourself for the most part. So our goal is that you're not dependent on us forever either, which again goes back to, hey, that's kind of a terrible business model. It
Yep.
is.
Yep.
But that's what we wanted for ourselves, was true independence when it comes to our health. And that's what was missing for us. And so when we see functional medicine practitioners that are basically still using a conventional model, but with more holistic type remedies, that's where I just feel like it's not fair to people. You're not giving them their health back in the end. So,
Yeah. No, not in the least. And the thing about it is you can do this in a way for the functional medicine practitioners out there. There's a way to do this that you're going to be able to make it a good life for yourself. You know, it may not be that you're going to be on the Forbes, list or anything like that, but you can still make a good life for yourself. It's just you have to find ways to be able to serve people in a way that they deserve to be served and supporting them. And maybe the payment that you get, it's not monetary.
yeah.
Maybe the payment you get is the fact that you're making a ripple in the entire health sphere, and that's going to make conventional medicine better. Because it's never going to come top down. It's always going to come bottom up. Yeah. The governing bodies, the pharmaceutical companies, all the insurance companies, the CEOs of these hospitals, they don't want to hurt revenue. They don't want to say, well, we need to spend more time and make less money. But if people start walking away from that model and start asking for more, then they're going to have no choice but to conform to what the people want. Yeah. And so there's power in numbers. Yeah. And that's going to be the way that this has to happen. And so, like I said, it may not be monetary. You may not be filthy rich because of all this. But what you might be able to do is sleep good at night. Yeah. And you might be able to cause a revolution in medicine that is so desperately needed at this point in time that you can say that you're one of the pioneers of it. And you were there and at the beginning, at ground zero, whenever COVID happened, and you started to help manipulate the landscape of health. And that's an awesome payment. If we never made money off this, granted, we got to keep the lights on so we can keep practicing. But if the only payment that we ever got is that people were just healing, I know that'd be enough for you. It'd be enough for me.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and the whole point of this conversation is for people to understand when you go to see your functional medicine practitioner, these are some of the things to look out for to know whether or not you're getting true functional medicine. Are they testing? Are they addressing diet and lifestyle? And how much support are you actually getting? Because if they're doing what we've been talking about this whole time, I personally, I wouldn't waste my money on that, especially the type of money they're charging, which is like $7,000 to $10,000 we're hearing for like 3-month programs.
Yes,
which
just
is
had an individual roll
egregious.
through.
And so that's the message that I hope everyone's hearing through this. We're not here trying to bash other functional medicine practitioners. I do think they're trying to do the right thing, but with a business model that they were taught that this is how you do business. And they're trying to make that work in a system that root cause solutions take time. Diet and lifestyle changes take time. And if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. The information is out there on how to get healthier, how to, if people just stopped doing the standard American diet, they would see a huge benefit in their life, right? So it's not an information problem. It's the
a support issue.
Support issue, exactly. Yeah, it's people are confused by all the information out there. They're not sure what applies to them and what doesn't. That's where the testing comes in, and it's a whole. There's several pieces to this puzzle. You can't just do one thing like supplements and expect to help people. So that's the only reason why for this conversation. I hope that's clear. We're not trying to bash these functional medicine practitioners. I love that there's more coming into this space.
Well, we need more. There's however many, billion of individuals inside the United States, billions of people?
350 million.
Million? Okay.
Yeah.
Millions. There we go.
Yeah.
So millions and millions of people inside the United States. I guess I was thinking like globally. Billions. Yeah. Yes. So, we could make the argument for globally as well, but in the United States, since that's what we know. So millions inside the United States. We need more quality practitioners, and we don't want to be the gatekeeper of everybody. Right. We don't have the capability, nor do we have the want to be able to bringing on that much of a burden onto just chronically healthy.
Can't do it.
And, circling back to what you were saying about the other practitioners, we love supporting other functional medicine practitioners. We do it all the time. We send people that if someone's not a good match for us, or if we know that someone else has a specialty in mental health or a specialty in joints, in movement, in whatever it might be, whatever the other specialty might be, we send people out all the time and say, listen, we're not the people for you. Go to this person. We've had conversations with them. We know that they're quality individuals and they're going to treat you right. Because we're also putting our name on the line whenever we hand someone off to somebody else. Because if we hand someone to another practitioner, then that other practitioner, if they give them a bad product, then we look just as bad.
Yeah.
And so, like what Erica was saying, we are not against other functional medicine practitioners in the least. And that's not what we're trying to get from this. We're trying to just make sure that people are educated and do your due diligence whenever you're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, and try to find someone that doesn't have these red flags, that are actually doing it for you. They're going to give you plenty of support, all the love that you need during this process, and they're willing to work with you and meet you exactly where they're at. Another kind of a sidebar to that is a good functional medicine practitioner, a good, coach in general, excuse me, is one that is going to meet you where you're at, but that's also going to bust your chops whenever it needs to be done. And so one that's still going to say, hey, listen, you can't keep doing that because you're not going to get those results, which that's the beauty of the lab work. Yeah. It tattles on them. It's a good rat. There's a bunch of good rat markers in there that will rat on you and tattle on you. Mm-hmm. But a good practitioner is going to be one that's not just a yes man or a yes woman. It's somebody that's going to say, listen, if you truly want this for your life and for your health, you can't do that anymore, but let's support the change. Yep. And let's make sure that you have the best protocol possible or the best options possible to make sure that that happens, and give them full support. Because that's what we keep talking about. That's what we keep coming back to, is the support side of things. Yeah. You've got all the support in the world, but they're also going to not be yes people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I hope that was helpful for everybody. If you're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, those are the things you need to look for to make sure you are getting the right one for you.
Yeah. So real quickly, before we wrap, what are your red flags in functional medicine? If we throw off a list, just to recap it all.
Testing, no testing done, supplements, and also, hey, you must buy our supplements. That's that one. Like if they won't let you do their program unless you buy their supplements, I would not see that person. Mm-hmm.
Which, let me interject here.
Yeah.
So now there's a difference between them saying that you can only buy their supplements, what they house, and them looking at the quality of the supplements that you're currently using, and saying that Walmart brand is not a good quality supplement. It's got folic acid instead of methylfolate in it. And for those of you that have an MTHFR gene variant, you don't want to touch folic acid with a 10-foot pole. And so if you're taking a supplement that has that in it, and they correct that, but then still give you the freedom to be able to get the supplement, they might supply it, but they're not strong-arming you into only using what they have. But I just want to throw a little sidebar in there to interrupt.
Yeah, and then the last thing is the lack of support. Yeah, just not even having the availability. Maybe they'll say, "Oh, you can call us if you have any questions." I'm sorry, that's still not good enough. If you're not seeing your practitioner for the next 3 months and they're just basically thinking the supplements are going to do all the heavy lifting there, like those are my biggest ones, and those are the ones that we see over and over and over again for people.
Yeah, exactly. So just be on the lookout. Make sure that whenever someone has the title of functional medicine, that they actually care for the outcome for you, and it's not a self-serving style of business. And so those are some red flags to look out for. We appreciate you guys being here.